Hi, I'm Gary from Golf Gear Australia. Today I'd like to share with you a couple of things regarding wedges and what you should be using regarding the loft and the type of material. Over the years, companies have tended to make their wedges stronger in the loft. You go back a few years, they were 48 degree. Over the years they've decreased in loft, and most companies now make their wedges around 44 and 45 degree, whereas the sand irons have remained at 56. So there's quite a big gap between your wedge and your sand iron. What you probably need to look at today is to get a gap wedge, which is between your wedge and sand iron. So if you're using a wedge that's 45 degree and you're using a sand iron that's around 55, 56, you need to look at a gap wedge around the 50 degree mark. That way you've got an even gap between your wedge, your gap wedge and your sand wedge. The next one up from that is your lob wedge, which is 60 degree. So that gives you, again, around about a 4 or a 5 degree gap between your wedge, your gap wedge, your sand wedge and your lob wedge. The other thing to consider is the type of material they're made from. Wedges are made from two materials, either stainless steel or carbon steel. Stainless steel wedges are generally cast. They're a harder metal. The ball will come off quicker. Better players tend to use carbon steel. It's a much softer metal. The ball tends to stay on the face a little bit longer. Judging your chipping and your pitching is much easier. You have a lot more control over it. A bit like using a hard ball versus a soft ball. So if you want to improve your chipping, my recommendation would be that you go to a carbon steel wedge. If you want to add more variations as to what clubs you can hit at different positions on the course by having extra lofts such as a gap wedge and a lob wedge, I'd recommend probably looking at a 50 degree and then a 60 degree. If you'd like an obligation-free appraisal of maybe what wedges you should be using, what material you should be using, click on the link below and I'll get back to you. I'm Gary from Golf Gear Australia.